Today I'm going to be talking with the director of a new Amazon movie that you can watch, you can rent or buy, called East Bay Confidential. This is a film noir movie, and I'm really excited to talk about film noir, about this movie in particular, about Westerns and cinema and all kinds of things, even literature and influences on the Troubadour channel. After World War II, something really changed in American cinema. The heroes became more morally ambiguous. The cities became darker and more corrupt. The endings stopped being clean and triumphant. European critics noticed this tonal shift and gave it the name film noir, which literally means black film or dark cinema. And Chris DePretis, who just directed East Bay Confidential, which is a film that I'm happy to say that I had a little teeny bit of a role in terms of being a script consultant many years ago. So I want to learn a little bit more about the script writing process too, perhaps. The movie is a modern film noir about a returning veteran, about suburban corruption, and the danger of appearances in contemporary America. So Chris, before we go to the theoretical realm, before we kind of, as you put it, geek out about film and film noir and gangster films and detective novels and yada, 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 I'd like you to give us the story of East Bay Confidential and why someone today who's busy, they got their phones to entertain them and they got all this stuff they could do. Why should they spend, I think it's $2.99 on Amazon to rent or $9.99 to buy? I recommend buying it. I bought it. So why should someone go buy this movie?
Well, first, Kirk, thank you, obviously, for hosting and having me here. It's great, of course, to talk with you. Here's the thing about a micro-budget film or micro-budget cinema generally, and why I would encourage the audience to explore kind of this level of production and this style of filmmaking, which is difficult, very different than what you see in the theaters, both in terms of the producing of a movie like East Bay, but also in how you ingest it, how you consume it. Micro-budget cinema is much closer to your experience on TikTok, I think, than it is to what you experience in a normal Hollywood movie. And certainly producing it, when we're out shooting, our crew and everything, we look a lot more, our impact, on set and everything looks a lot more like a little social media video than it does, a big Hollywood production. And I think, as far as that concerns the audience, how that relates is that if you enjoy what you see on TikTok or other social media channels, you're getting art, you're getting short form video that is direct from the artist, that is very unfiltered typically. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have the Hollywood movie, which goes through so many, they are largely built by committee. Now, of course, there's great auteur directors who have a ton of power and make great movies. There's no question about that. But what a studio will greenlight and the process that a script goes through, the amount of eyes that it has to go through. And I think that what the general Hollywood movie that gets turned out, I think is much more a product of corporate interests, I suppose I would say, or it's a big business. Whereas when you look at micro budget filmmaking, you are looking at more singular visions of unique artists who have the only constraint is money, which is still a big constraint, but there's nobody telling us what stories you can tell or the way that you shoot it. And so you're going to see things in micro budget filmmaking that are, I think, a little more raw, certainly, perhaps less polished, but a little closer to the artist's intent, perhaps, than Hollywood might allow, unless you've got a big, a big household name. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So like the TikTok relationship's interesting. So it's basically an extended, in terms of, you're saying, production values. You're not going to see big explosions. You're not going to see a Brad Pitt actor commanding $30 million, that type of thing. You're not going to see that in a micro budget film.
Right.
But on the flip side, so like I see a lot of complaints today. I think they're ridiculous, actually. So I'm glad you brought it up. I see a lot of complaints about people, Hollywood's unoriginal, Hollywood XYZ, which is true. But the reason is because they spent $100 million on a product and they have to guarantee they get that money back, or they cannot do it again, right? You can't just keep flopping and losing hundreds of millions of dollars and expect to keep doing it. So that's why they use, now they're using video games, which I love. I hope they do Red Dead Redemption 2. Like they do all the, I like the Fallout series is fun. That's what they have to do. They have to take something that they have a very large confidence is going to make them money, a story that's going to make them money. Otherwise, they cannot spend that kind of money. It's just, no one's going to give you 100, 150. I think the Odyssey movie is like $250 million with the Christopher Nolan. I think that's what he spent on it, with something like that. It was like crazy. And you have to have all the big Hollywood names involved because they're all going to bring their people, their star power to come see it. So even if it flopped, it would still flop as in getting maybe $200 million, right? That's a flop for them, right? Yeah. At a micro budget, what you're getting are more original stories. You're getting, like you said, I think that's something that's a value is that, and this has been around for a while. These independent films allow filmmakers like nobody, maybe one or two producers who give them a certain amount of money might have some say in it, but it's not like this, like you're saying, this committee, they're incumbent to making sure they get their money's worth, essentially. So you get more unique stories you won't see in Hollywood very often. And I think that's I agree with you. That's a good reason to go see some micro budget films and just independent films generally, I think, which yours falls into, right? Yeah.
Totally. And, I will also, of course, say, I am a fan of Hollywood movies, and so that's not to knock them.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a wonderful level of quality that they provide. And that's something that's a trade-off with micro budget films, is you're looking at something that is put together by hand and with way fewer people. Like sometimes I get down on myself, but then I'll watch a movie and I'll just
look at the credits.
It's like
crazy.
I can't feel too bad. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like 9 minutes of credits on this film that I saw before, something like that. It was like ridiculous. And yeah, that's like full-time jobs for people for a year or whatever. Yeah, and you can't compare. But I'd like to know a little bit about the story itself, because there is something special about the story. We're not going to see it very often in a Hollywood film. Sure. There are some, I think, that are, might be touching on the same kind of style and genre and characters, but there's a lot of unique aspects to what you're doing that you're not going to see anywhere. And I know one off the top of my head that's really, really unique that I don't think anyone does in Hollywood or anywhere else. But I want to hear what you say first, and then I'll tell you my unique one after you.
Sure. Yeah. I think, probably some of the things that you're maybe less likely. So, the protagonist is a Iraq war veteran, and he's not presented necessarily as being like Hollywood's typical depiction of a veteran might be like the noble guy who's come home and maybe he's having a hard time. But this guy, he plays more of a loser.
A buddy from the old platoon freed up his couch while I sort things out. His little smoke show wife isn't thrilled with the setup. Between tiptoeing around her, holding down dog shit duty, and making deliveries all day, I've about reached the end of my rope.
And I think that, I wanted to reflect kind of, hey, a kid who just got out of the army and he's not squared away at the moment. He kind of stumbles into this sex trafficking plot that goes all the way up to the politicians local to the area, which is also, perhaps a little less large audience friendly. I think a studio is maybe less excited to greenlight something like that. And, it features characters, I think, that you maybe typically, I wouldn't say are never represented, but are less often given the spotlight. You've got the homeless veteran who's kind of a drunk and who's kind of a scumbag who's living under the bridge, for example. And then, I don't know if where you were going, but perhaps the social media influencer femme fatale, which is something, I think that's a character type that we all stare at every single day. You turn on
sure.
And it isn't always represented in movies, or at least not yet. But specifically, with that character, there is a duplicitousness to social media generally, not to call out influencers specifically, but just generally when we're on social media, we sort of create a face. And I felt like that fit well into noir. But generally, I think that the story, which is about the said veteran getting framed for murder and having to try to clear his name, um, is a gritty enough story, and a fairly pessimistic story that you don't see all the time. But at the same time, it's certainly not the first time that this one's been done, and it is, I mean, highly derivative of all the film noir movies that came before it in the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
And in many ways, I'm just sort of cherry picking a lot of my favorite um, moments and stuff from those old movies, and trying to have a chance to sort of play in that space myself.
Well, so I don't know if I think this comes up in film noir sometimes, but one of the things that I considered was unique about your film, especially today, is actually just the setting, right?
Mm,
Like you don't see a lot of movies that are getting into a grittier side of a suburban, what we would consider wealthy area.
sure.
Like, I'm from Fremont. When I met you, I was living in Livermore.
Mm,
That's not a poor area in America, right? In general,
right. Yeah.
it's like the housing price. Like the reason we left was the housing prices are crazy, and I bought a house in Austin for a fraction of what I would be able to buy it in California. So
Sure.
it's interesting to see a kind of a veteran who's coming back to a suburban area versus urban, which I think a lot of film noir comes out of an urban. It tends to take place in LA and Chicago, in New York City, where there's a much more, the moral ambiguity is clear in just in that world, that there's a lot of bad things happening. There's a lot of corruption in the city government, which you see in your film as well.
Yeah.
And you brought it. I don't know if you did this consciously, because I can't remember when you, I wish I remembered more about the script. I read it like 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was 2021. But
Hmm.
when, but like, the relevance to Jeffrey Epstein is pretty clear. And, like in all the stuff that's happening with that scandal at the
Yeah.
highest levels is very part of it. Maybe because there's always been scandals. So it's just, that's another one. So it fits into that genre. The unique thing that I saw was the setting of a kind of grittier side to the suburban world, which if you live in any, and not just suburban world, but that particular East Bay area, which is a big area. And there is a lot of, that around if you drive around, for sure. I think it's not
Sure.
everywhere, but it's there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on it. I mean, obviously you did it because you live there, but
Yeah.
what do you think it adds to the film? Because I think it does. I think it's really interesting.
Well, I think that's right. So yeah, certainly, I live here, so that helps. But it was conscious, and it'll go back to something like, and now this is more of a neo noir, but I like, one of the movies that probably my favorite David Lynch movie is Blue Velvet.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
the opening of that movie, which is so pretty, and there's white picket fences and roses, and the sprinkler is happening, on the lawn, and he brings us into this uh, beautiful suburban neighborhood and what seems like a typical suburban family, and then of course the the plot starts moments later when kind of in this same area, Kyle MacLachlan's character finds a severed ear, and
Mm.
um, and I kind of like what David Lynch did there, where he, instead of permitting the suburbs to be a safe place or
Mm.
a safe haven away from the city, he suggests that the suburbs themselves are hiding something. And then in East Bay, so I took that, and in East Bay, um the and this is a very classic, I mean, as you know, this is a very classic noir theme, but there is this, um and it's reflected in classical noir, um duality is
Okay.
reflected in them using mirrors. You think Lady from Shanghai by the Orson Welles, Rita Hayworth movie, I think, is at the end they have all the mirrors and everything. And lots of these movies, Kubrick had this movie called Killer's Kiss, I think, before the killing. And same
Okay.
thing,
I
lots of
haven't seen
good
that
mirror.
one.
It's good. Yeah,
I've
it's
seen the
less.
Shanghai. I like that one. That's fun.
Yeah, that
That's a
one's
good one.
great. But
Yeah.
back in the day, it was like, hey, if there's a mirror and somebody's looking into it, it's kind of projecting this idea that they've got two faces.
Yes.
And so in East Bay, and without spoiling too much, I was interested in that idea, and I do want to get to a note that you had about the script. I'll arrive there, but
Okay.
there is this idea of everybody being two-faced, and the
Mhm.
deeper theme there is distrust, right? You can't trust anybody around you because you don't know who they are. So the main female protagonist is a character called Gladys, who was a former sex worker who's been kind of pressed by the FBI to go undercover in this trafficking ring and uncover their documents. Right, the logbook is sort of the movie's MacGuffin, and so she
Explain that
has
term. We've talked
uh
about this before, but
yeah
we need to explain terms a little bit.
yeah, totally. It's the movie's Death Star plans, and it essentially it gives something of value to the characters that kind of moves the plot along. Um, and so for her character, for Gladys, she has two faces. She presents herself as one of the traffickers to the other
Mm,
traffickers, but
sure.
when in fact she is a mole and she is lying to them. Another example would be the congresswoman who is at the top of this crime ring, who on the news and on the podcasts that she is a guest on, she presents herself as this person, this altruistic person who's caring for veterans, who's caring for women who've experienced abuse, and who's caring for children.
Hmm.
When in fact, we end up learning that she is responsible for most of. She's kind of at the top of this crime ring. She's actually responsible for most of this stuff that's going on. So she's got her two faces. Same thing with the main news anchor. Again, he presents himself one way to the world via the news, and then a different way in real life. And even he even presents himself one certain way to his wife. We don't see those interactions, but we assume that the
Yeah.
affair that he's having is
That
kept
was a
secret.
good reveal. So yeah, hopefully people will go watch the movie now. I don't want to spoil too much, but
Sure.
there's a lot of like I did want to say something nice about like the filmmaking that you did was very like micro budget fine, but the plot, the way you revealed things was very professional in my opinion. Like
Okay.
you had a great sense of all the backstories going on, but it wasn't in your face and explaining everything. It just kind of was there. Sometimes something might reveal itself. And what you were just talking about, that was kind of shocking to me when he was outside the Vine Theater and you
Sure.
find out that was something secret about their relationship. I mean, maybe that was revealed earlier and I just missed it. But the relationship wasn't like they sit in a room. I think this is, what like new directors might like. They're sitting in a room they're after making love or something and they just kind of talk about the relationship, right? And then
Right.
you learn what's going on. You kind of do a like I think that's why I think the film is worth for just any general audience watching. It's a very professional film, like and I thought the plot was great in the way that you did perspective in various ways, because it wasn't spelled out but it was very clear. So when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is that person. Now we're seeing it in a different perspective, in terms of putting all the elements together and the revelations of the characters and, things like that. So,
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate that. I'll definitely credit, the script is the one thing that we could do that in theory we could do at the same level as any other movie that comes out of Hollywood or any other
Yeah,
place. I mean,
that's
there's a
true.
point of course
Yeah.
where but yeah, I mean, writing the script in theory we should be kind of at the highest level that we can be. And now that being said, I have finite script writing experience, and so what I found was the most helpful to me on the process was just finding a lot of readers.
Yeah.
And you'll see like the main kind of credit at the end of the
Yeah.
movie are script consultants, and
Yeah.
you were one of those. And actually I I I would talk to the crew a lot about you, Kirk, because I got a lot of good feedback from all the different from everybody, and that helped a lot. Just people poking holes and asking questions and whatnot. But I don't know if you remember, but your feedback was very key. Maybe the most, if not the most key feedback we got, which was have Miguel find the have Miguel uncover the logbook. It wasn't originally, in an earlier
Oh,
draft,
okay.
it wasn't that way. And I mean, man, that sure helps
Yeah.
the, and so, I think with
I'll take
writing,
it. All right.
oh yeah,
That
no,
was a
you
good
saw, I mean,
one.
it was
Yeah.
yours. Yeah, it was great. And it
That's
helped
awesome.
motivate. Yeah, it helped
Yeah.
motivate the
Yeah.
characters. And the main thing is like, hey, there's some ideas that I'm curious to explore, and there's a style that I want to work in, but there's a lot to make in a movie. And even doing a script, it's like, hey, maybe I could imagine it 70% of the way there, but you
Yeah.
can't give the audience a 70% quality script. And to all the writers who are in your audience, having humility, and going to seek counsel from the people around you and just say, hey, how can this be better? What's wrong with this? And then, not do your best to swallow your pride. And it's like, hey, that person had a good idea, let's get it in there. And it's
Yeah.
better, I mean, it's much better to get that feedback during the script writing process than to get that feedback, you know, on an Amazon review after the movie's already out and there's nothing you can do about it anymore. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, be careful with those reviews though. People do stupid reviews that aren't
Totally.
like they just review bomb and stuff. That's
Totally.
a whole but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, and I want to move into like what you think film noir is and like
Yeah.
look into that a little bit, but I guess the last thing is on what you just said is reading a lot about writers, and I've always been interested in how writers work. A writer I really love, and there's a great biography of him, is Henrik Ibsen.
Okay.
He's a Scandinavian